Here is the creation story of a landmark, one beloved peak in the American West. In the beginning, this mount had form without meaning. It was not visible nor haunted. Now it is both. Getting to the bottom of the matter requires disorientation. The bedrock is liquid. The landmark's life history begins with the ghost of a lake. Utah Lake occupies the center of Utah Valley, which occupies the center of Utah County, which occupies the center of Utah. The names expand outward concentrically, with decreasing specificity for a reason. In the 19th century, and for untold ages before, this lake defined a place and a people. Indeed, in its original usage as a place name, Utah signified the lakeside home of the Utahs. The name was not endemic. Colonial invaders, first Spaniards, then Mexicans, then Americans, imposed it. At the time of contact, the natives called themselves fish eaters, lake people, or the Timpanogos, a name drawn from the river where the lake fish spawned. The lake of the Timpanogos was a haven in a hard, inconstant land. Even in the thinnest year, the natives, now called Utes, could procure fat trout in the spring. This rich, anomalous ecosystem attracted outsiders. In 1849, a Euro-American settler population, the Latter-day Saints or Mormons, began colonizing Utah Valley. These farmers became fish eaters too, as they struggled at first to establish an agrarian economy. Here at the shoreline, natives and newcomers coexisted edgily for one generation. Under the guidance of their prophet Brigham Young, the saints aspired to redeem their red brethren, the Lamanites. In practice, hostility supplanted harmony. Settlers and Indians clashed repeatedly at the mouth of the Provo Timpanogos River, the best fishing site in the valley. Ultimately, with the federal government's blessing, the Mormons forced the starving remnants of the Timpanogos to move to a distant reservation. Without the lake people, the lake stopped being the center place. Nonetheless, Utah Lake remained significant to the second generation of settlers as an economic and recreational resource. The presence of water still set the valley apart. In the 20th century, things changed. Gradually, Utah Lake was marginalized. As a result of local overuse and state mismanagement, the trout fishery degenerated into a carp pond. Then, during World War II, the federal government built a colossal steel mill on the lake shore. The water acquired a reputation, not undeserved, for being polluted. As local recreationists looked elsewhere for fishing, boating, and swimming, Utah Lake lost its centrality. By the end of the century, it was perceived as just one element of the valley rather than its essence. Utah's eponymous lake had symbolically shrunk. In 1996, in conjunction with the state centennial, a local newspaper ran the headline, "Timpanogos has always dominated Utah Valley." The accompanying story had nothing to do with a lake or a river. It was all about a mountain. Mount Timpanogos, a limestone massif in the Wasatch Range, is by far the most loved, most hiked, most photographed, most talked about mountain in contemporary Utah. Its attractions include the Mount Timpanogos Wilderness Area, the Timpanogos Cave National Monument, and the Sundance Resort, built by movie star Robert Redford. More than 1 million people, and counting, live within 20 miles of this recreational magnet. Here along the Wasatch Front, Utah's main population corridor, the overwhelming majority of residents are Mormons, descendants of the pioneers. In conversation, locals refer to the mountain by its endearing diminutive, Timp. The bonds of affection are strongest in Utah Valley, otherwise known as the Provo-Orem metropolitan area, where the mountain's name graces a hospital, 3 public schools, and a Mormon temple. The profile of the massif adorns the masthead of Provo's newspaper, whose publisher sponsors a popular summer contest. Guess when the last winter snow will be visible on Timp. Oil paintings of Timp abound in local offices and foyers. Picture windows face north toward the rock face. Climbing to the 11,750-foot summit is a local rite of passage, something to do before you grow old. Grandparents entertain their progeny with Indian stories about the landform. The most widespread tale, the legend of Timpanogos, concerns the lover's leap of an Indian princess. Tour guides at Timpanogos Cave have repeated this yarn for decades. In the 1930s, a Provo composer wrote an opera based on the suicide legend. More recently, a local ballet troupe adapted it for the stage. Influenced by the story, many Valley residents, children in particular, visualize the outline of a dead or sleeping maiden on the crest of the mountain. People see what they want to see, but vision, like desire, changes over time. In the mid-19th century, people didn't see the landmark called Timp because it didn't yet exist. Mount Timpanogos didn't even appear as a named feature on maps. To settlers, it was just another long ridge in the mountains, which even in the aggregate didn't merit recognition as Utah Valley's outstanding natural feature. That distinction belonged to the lake. What caused a mountain space to become the mountain place called Timp? Remarkably, it was a promotional campaign. In the 1910s and 1920s, boosters from Brigham Young University and its home city, Provo, desired their own celebrated mountain. To realize this goal, they organized mass community hikes to what federal surveyors had determined, mistakenly it turns out, to be the highest point in the Wasatch. Promoters pushed a wonder mountain. The point man, BYU athletics director Eugene Timpanogos Roberts, wrote and disseminated the original fake Indian legend. Intuitively, he understood a geographic principle. Great landmarks are storied landmarks. Since Mount Timpanogos possessed no usable past, boosters invented one. Ultimately, they failed to turn their legendary mountain into a national landmark, but they succeeded in making a local one. The booster project worked so well as to be forgotten. In local collective memory, legendary Indians in the Rocky Highlands replaced historical Utes in the watery lowlands. Notwithstanding the Mormon fixation on pioneer history, the story of Provo's colonization, a violent, intimate chronicle of Mormon-Ute relations, fell to the margins of consciousness by the 1910s when the legend of Timpanogos began to circulate. As a memory site, Mount Timpanogos encouraged forgetting. According to the stories told by hikers, the unnamed Indians of olden days were mountain people too. In short, the sense of place surrounding Timp concealed a double displacement, the literal displacement of the Timpanogos Utes and the symbolic displacement of their lake. To be understood, this split-level history must be viewed from the bottom as well as the top. The same large-scale historical forces that strengthened one landmark weakened the other. Utah Lake was an emblem of the Aquarian Age, a time when people necessarily developed intimate relationships with their local water resources. Before the 20th century, fording a stream, carrying water from a well, bathing in a mineral spring, collecting ice were everyday American experiences. In the subsequent hydraulic age, water use went indoors, even as water knowledge went underground. Today, only technocrats and technicians develop familiarity with waterworks. For most residents, it's enough to know that potable water arrives through one set of invisible pipes and wastewater leaves through another. Visual and recreational contact with faraway nature has largely replaced tactile and workaday contact with nearby nature. In this respect, Timp symbolizes our time.